Well, we got news that George Santos has been charged with new criminal felony charges by the Justice Department. A superseding indictment has come down. This is not good for George. It's good for justice. Here from CBS News, George Santos charged with conspiracy, wire fraud, and more. Embattled New York Representative George Santos was indicted on new federal charges on Tuesday in a superseding indictment, including conspiracy, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and credit card fraud, just days after his former campaign treasurer pleaded guilty and admitted to much of the conduct. According to court documents, prosecutors in the Eastern District of New York newly alleged that Santos and Nancy Marks, his former campaign treasurer, submitted false financial reports to the Federal Election Commission that inflated the campaign's fundraising numbers in an effort to qualify for certain perks, benefits, and support from Republican Party leaders. So we covered the story somewhat recently of his former treasurer, Nancy Marks, pleading guilty, as the article noted. And as I mentioned when covering that story, it's not a good sign for George Santos if someone who was allegedly a part of the acts that they're then pleading guilty for pleads guilty for those acts and then is able to point and say, the person I was doing that with and at the direction of was this guy, and the evidence is damning enough for that person to feel the need to plead guilty, then the person being pointed at is probably in a tough situation. I probably could have explained that more succinctly, but we continue forward. The 10 new charges included in the superseding indictment unsealed Tuesday also include fresh allegations that Santos used individuals' personal credit card information to make unauthorized charges in support of his political campaign. The victims, according to the charge, were previous donors to the campaign who had submitted their personal information when contributing funds to Santos. Someone is kind enough to George Santos to give their personal information as they're donating to his campaign, and to thank them, George Santos allegedly steals money from them. In one instance, the court documents unsealed Tuesday reveal Santos allegedly racked up $15,800 in charges on a contributor's credit card, a sum far higher than federal campaign laws permit. That donor did not know of or authorize charges exceeding such limits, prosecutors say, and it lays out the fact that previously he has already had criminal charges brought against him by the DOJ that are being added on top of now a slew of charges from the original indictment that included accusations that he devised an alleged scheme to defraud prospective supporters of his 2022 congressional campaign. Prosecutors alleged he used solicited campaign donations on personal expenses, including luxury. This is crazy. Every time I read this, it's like a movie. Luxury designer clothes. That's what he was using this money on. Credit card and car payments and payments on personal debts. So, more legal difficulties for George Santos. Here was this as it was breaking on CNN.
The Justice Department has charged one of the Republicans voting, George Santos of New York, with 23 counts, including identity theft and money laundering. CNN's Manu Raju is on Capitol Hill for us, where this news is just breaking. Manu, I know you have to do a lot to get kicked out of the Republican Party these days, but can Congressman Santos keep his job as he faces these charges?
This has been a huge question all year long. Of course, he had been charged earlier this year. This is a superseding indictment, Jake, that was just announced by the Justice Department, filed in district court in New York. And according to this release, he was charged with conspiracy, wire fraud, false statements, falsification of records, aggravated identity theft, and credit card fraud. Now, this indictment just unsealed. We'll have to go through all the details and the allegations therein, but undoubtedly this will put pressure on Republicans to take action.
So I understand all this is still technically just allegations, but seems pretty damning against George Santos at this point in time. And if indeed all of this is proven to be the case, which it wouldn't shock me if indeed George Santos was dishonestly deceiving and defrauding people, it is once again a reminder of how character matters, because before we knew about all the potentially criminal stuff, we just knew this guy was a huge liar on things that weren't criminal. All of his past, his resume, we saw the way that he is this serial liar and clearly did not have the character to present himself honestly to voters. And then potentially that low character played out in other areas of even more consequence. And thus, he's now being prosecuted for it. And so even before we know for sure the negative outcomes of someone's low character when they are in a position of power, choosing higher character people will always be better for the country and specifically their constituents. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show and the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. And there's a link in the description.